Okay, Senator Rhiannon.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Could the department provide an update of how many unauthorised maritime arrivals have been subject to the enhanced screening policy?
T2, isn't it?
Is it?
It's across over.
Senator, between the 27th of October 2012 and the 30th of October 2013, there were 2,745 interviews conducted under the enhanced screening process, and those 2,745 interviews were conducted for screening of a total of 3,072 IMAs. So some of them were family groups with young children, so they were not independently interviewed.
And what was the final figure? 3,000?
3,072
and 72.
IMAs.
Thank you. Is the department aware of any asylum seekers who have suffered torture or mistreatment after being returned to Sri Lanka as a result of the enhanced screening process?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
Is the department aware of any asylum seekers who have returned to Australia from Sri Lanka after being removed as a consequence of the enhanced screening process?
Sorry, Senator, can you repeat that? If
Is it
they've returned to Australia
Yes.
after being removed,
Who have returned to Australia from Sri Lanka after being removed as a
Yes.
consequence of the enhanced screening process. So they've come, they've been...
yeah, and been taken home and then they've come back again. My recollection is there are a small number. I'll take it on notice, though, to give you an accurate figure.
Thank you. And with regard to the earlier question that I just asked, the previous question, and you said no, that you're not aware of any who have suffered torture or mistreatment, is that based on your own assessment, or you rely on advice from other departments or other quarters?
So the information that I have in front of me, Senator, says that we've had 4 complaints made to Australian government agencies in relation to people's treatment in Sri Lanka, and all of those claims have been investigated and have been found not to have any particular weight. We've also received 3...
Sorry, you said investigated and found to have?
not to have any substance.
No substance?
We're
yes.
aware that there are 3 complaints to the Human Rights Commission relating to people returned to Sri Lanka under enhanced screening.
So therefore you've cancelled your earlier question, which was no, and replaced it with that.
I thought the question you asked was, were we aware of people being subject to torture?
Yes, and when I asked that question, you said no, and then I've come back to it, and you've now given those figures. So
no, I've given you the figures of complaints that we're aware of.
So, Senator, just to make it very clear, you asked, were we aware of anyone who has been tortured?
Yes.
We said no.
Yes.
The next part of the question went to, have there been any other complaints? There have been 4 that Ms Larkin's talked about, and those have been proven to be not so. Therefore, there is no evidence of, in any case that we are aware of torture.
And the 3 complaints?
They have been proven to be not true.
The 3 complaints of the Human Rights Commission are still being investigated.
Still being highlighted.
They're a separate issue, Senator.
But my second question actually was, on what were you basing your very strong answer of no?
On my advice that I have in front of me, Senator, on the complaints that we've had to date.
Right, so it's based on those 4 complaints.
Based on the 4 complaints that we have had raised with Australian government agencies, yes, that have been investigated. We don't have any substantiated evidence of torture in anyone we've returned.
How do you substantiate the evidence? I mean, do you have people on the ground in Sri Lanka sneaking
And again,
around?
these won't be investigations that we will have undertaken. They will have been undertaken by other agencies, so I'd need to take that on notice.
Can you take on notice who the other agencies are?
Certainly.
And who the other agencies are in general, and with regard to the 4 complaints, who supplied you with that information?
Certainly.
Thank you. Just going back to the first question I asked, and you gave me the response about 2,745 interviews out of 3,072 people. Of that number, how many have been screened in and how many screened out?
Senator, I don't have the details of screen in, screen out. I do have the number of removals. So of that 3,072 people, 1,191 have been removed up to the 31st of October.
1,191. And as a result, could you take it on notice, the number who have been screened in and screened out, please?
Sure.
As a result of the enhanced screening policy, how many people have been returned to Sri Lanka?
That's the number I just gave you,
1,191.
Yep.
How many people have been returned to Sri Lanka voluntarily?
If you could just bear with us, Senator, it's okay. So voluntarily, in this financial year, 12 IMAs have returned voluntarily to Sri Lanka.
And how many have returned involuntary? So is it 12, take away of 12 from 1,191?
No, that figure, Senator, was from October 2012 to October this year. So the 12 voluntary returns is just in this financial year since July 2013 to the present.
So can you give us figures so I can compare it? Like,
sure. So perhaps if I give you 2 financial year figures. So the number for 2012-13, there were 1,056 involuntary returns.
1,056?
That's correct, and 159 voluntary returns.
159 voluntary returns.
That was last year, and to date, this financial year, it's been 12 voluntary returns and 140 involuntary.
And involuntary. And for both those sets of figures, could you give me the figures on how many were unaccompanied minors? So for the voluntary and involuntary in those financial years, please.
Certainly, we could take that on notice.
On notice. Okay, thank you very much. Have any unauthorised maritime arrivals been returned to Sri Lanka as a result of the enhanced screening policy without having personal items, including identity papers, returned to them?
They would be returned with the goods they came with, and they would travel on an international travel authority document to go home if they had destroyed their paperwork, Senator.
So my question actually was, have any UMAs been returned to Sri Lanka as a result of the policy without having their personal items returned to them? Are you confident in your reply that they have? Because that was how I read your answer, how I heard your answer.
My understanding is absolutely yes, they go home with what they come with unless there is a particular issue with it. Yes. Yeah. Property is gathered, tagged, and does go back with them.
You sure you don't want to take it on notice to check? Because it's a pretty strong statement you're making.
Well, it is, Senator, but I've also been there during different operations. They have a very rigorous process. We do, from time to time, get allegations that they don't get their gear with them, but it is tagged, listed, and goes with the individual.
So there's been no cases where detainees' property has not been returned?
That's what I'm saying, Senator.
Okay.
What I'm not saying is there has been no complaints that some individuals will say certain things have not been returned, but our our strong view is the items are listed, tagged, and they go home with individuals.
And has there been any cases where the property has been returned to another person by mistake?
I'd have to take that on notice, Senator. Again, it's tagged in front of them, and if there were things that got confused in the process, it's usually confused amongst individuals at a point in time when this exercise happens, but I can take that on notice to see if there's anything more.
I think there are those incidents where your people get confused about who they're dealing with. So thank you for taking it on notice. And can you take on notice if not only has a detainee's property been returned to another person by mistake, but has that person then been returned to Sri Lanka as a result of the enhanced screening policy? So the person's gone back with the wrong documentation?
Well, again, Senator, if you're talking about did the wrong person go back, I would reject that statement. We have a rigorous process of who is screened and how that process works, and who then goes on that manifest to be returned to Sri Lanka.
Thank you. Does the database where enhanced screenings are stored always list the outcome of all screening decisions by DIAC officers?
Senator, I'm not sure whether the database does, but we keep a record of all decisions by DIAC officers.
So how do you keep those records, please?
I'm just not sure the form in which we keep them, but each case we will record all of the decisions that are made in relation to that case.
So it could be on a piece of paper in a manila folder?
No, in a file.
But it could be hard copy?
It could be hard copy, yes. Yeah.
And do you keep records of reviews as well?
So yes, for each case, all of the records of the decision making for that, there'll be a complete record of decisions for that case.
So could you take it on notice, please, if it's kept as on a database or as hard copy, and if it's both, what the breakdown is?
Sure.
Thank you. Have any detainees been screened out but moved to a mainland facility and then deported at a later date as a result of their screening outcome?
We'd take that on notice, Senator. There's too many variables there to just come up with an answer now, so we'll take that on notice.
Okay, thank you. And as part of that, in taking it on notice, could you also take on notice, have any detainees been screened out, moved to a community centre and then deported as a result of their screening outcome? Pretty similar, but just to cover all bases.
We'll take it on notice, but I don't understand that question, but we'll analyse that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.